All right, let's break down the Raiders' offseason and their current situation. Heading into this year, the Raiders have a huge advantage $95 million in cap space, the second most in the entire NFL according to SpotRack. And they might free up even more by cutting Gardner Minshew. With a new head coach, a fresh front office, and Tom Brady joining the organization, the Raiders have a lot of money to spend and plenty of decisions to make. Now, where do they need help? Quarterback? Definitely. Running back? Could use depth. Another wide receiver? Wouldn't hurt. The offensive line, especially the interior, needs reinforcements. On defense, a solid coverage linebacker is a must, along with more depth at cornerback. The edge rush? Also a concern since Malcolm Kuntz and Kalavan Chason are set to hit free agency. The Raiders have the money. Now the question is, how will they spend it? Even though the Raiders have a lot of cap space, that money could disappear fast. There are plenty of holes to fill, and several key players may need to be re-signed. But the biggest question? What will the Raiders do at quarterback? Honestly, this year's free agent quarterback class isn't great. The top name out there is Sam Darnold, coming off a strong season with the Minnesota Vikings. He'll likely be a hot commodity, but here's the issue. His market value is $40 million per year. That's a huge price tag for a quarterback who's had one good season, and in a perfect situation. Minnesota had a great head coach, Kevin O'Connell, elite weapons, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and a solid run game. Everything was set up for him to succeed. Now, hiring Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator does give me more confidence in the Raiders' system. But is Darnold really the long-term answer? To me, the answer is no. We saw his ceiling in Minnesota, a good QB, but not a game changer when it mattered most. The Vikings went one and done in the playoffs, and he didn't step up in crunch time. And for $40 million a year? That's way too much for a quarterback who still has question marks. He's young, so he's likely looking for a 4-year deal or more, not just a short-term contract. The Raiders can't afford to gamble on him as their franchise quarterback. Now, another name hitting the market? Former Green Bay Packers legend Aaron Rodgers. Now, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, at this stage of his career, he should probably retire. He's getting up there in age, and while his 2024 stats with the Jets weren't terrible, he's realistically got 1 year left, at most. But the bigger issue? His leadership. Rodgers has a huge ego, and that could be toxic in the Raiders' locker room. He's not the kind of veteran who would mentor a young quarterback or play the role of a bridge quarterback. He wants control, he wants to be the star, and frankly, he made things even worse in New York. Yes, he's a big name, and yes, he's available. But the Raiders should steer clear. Another option? Russell Wilson. But here's the thing. His history with Pete Carroll raises some questions. We don't really know how their time in Seattle ended, or if there's any bad blood between them. A year ago, signing Wilson on a veteran minimum deal might have made sense. But now, he's expected to land somewhere between $30 to $35 million per season, which is a huge price to pay for a quarterback who isn't in his prime anymore. So, should the Raiders consider him? That's a tough call. Now let's talk about Russell Wilson again. Yes, he's still a solid quarterback and could serve as a decent bridge option for a year or two. But let's be real. Drama seems to follow him everywhere. Take the latest rumors, for example. Reports suggest that Wilson's camp leaked information about the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, not allowing him to call audibles late in the season. And what happened right after that? The Steelers decided to move on from Wilson. Coincidence? Maybe. But it does raise some questions. If the Raiders want a younger, cheaper option, Justin Fields could be interesting. His athleticism is a perfect fit for Chip Kelly's offense, which has always favored mobile quarterbacks. But here's the problem. Fields isn't really a bridge quarterback. He's too young, still developing, and needs coaching himself. He's not going to mentor a rookie quarterback, and if the Raiders draft a young QB this season, which they should, they'll need a veteran presence to guide him. And that brings us to another potential free agent QB, Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones. He's an interesting option if the price is right. If the Raiders could lock him in on a short-term deal, say 2 years, he'd be a solid bridge quarterback. In fact, I'd much rather take a short-term risk on Jones than break the bank for Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, or even Justin Fields. But here's the catch. Jones's market value will be the key. If he's looking for $30+ million a year on a long-term deal, then the Raiders should stay far away. One thing is clear. How the Raiders handle free agency at quarterback will give us big clues about their draft plans. If they spend big on someone like Sam Darnold, they might not draft a quarterback early. If they stay quiet in free agency, it likely means they're going all in on a rookie quarterback in the draft. This new Raiders regime will have some tough decisions to make, and this year's quarterback free agency class isn't exactly exciting. Now, when it comes to free agency targets, some positions make sense, and some don't. Running back? Stay away. Too much talent in the draft. Wide receiver? That's where things get interesting. One name floating around? T. Higgins. At 26 years old, he's put up some impressive numbers. 330 receptions, 4,500+ yards, 34 touchdowns in 70 games, and last season, 73 catches, 910 yards, and 10 touchdowns in just 12 games. Could he be a game changer for the Raiders? Maybe. T. Higgins is definitely a name that gets people excited, and for good reason. But there's one major concern: his availability. Over the last 2 seasons, he's missed 10 games. Throughout his career, he's never played a full season. That's a red flag, especially when you consider his $25.4 million market value. He's going to get paid, but should the Raiders be the ones to take that risk? If we had a young, promising quarterback like Drake May in New England or Jaden Daniels in Washington, adding Higgins would make more sense. But right now, we don't even have a reliable QB to throw him the ball. Plus, is he really a true number? One receiver? He thrived as Jamar Chase's number. 2 in Cincinnati. But at $25 million+ per year, he needs to be the main guy, and that's a gamble. For that kind of money, the Raiders should look elsewhere at wide receiver. But if there's one offensive player the Raiders should go all in on, it's Trey Smith, the dominant offensive guard from the Chiefs. Only 25 years old, elite run blocker would weaken a division rival, Kansas City Chiefs. His market value is $19.7 million, but investing in the trenches is the smartest way to set up a young QB for success. If the Raiders are going to splash big money on one player in free agency, Trey Smith should be the guy. Now, there are other names to watch in free agency, too. LB Dre Greenlaw, solid playmaker. Imagine him paired with Divine Diablo. That could be a deadly combo. CB Charvarius Ward, 49ers, a shutdown corner who could be a huge upgrade. CB Jacorian Bennett, promising young talent but needs a veteran presence alongside him. Meanwhile, Jack Jones was a disappointment. Inconsistent, gave up big plays, and struggled against the run. The Raiders need another solid CB to tighten up the secondary. The Raiders need an upgrade at cornerback, no doubt about it. Jacorian Bennett could use a veteran alongside him, whether that's through free agency or an early draft pick. Key free agents to bring back now. When it comes to cap space and in-house free agents, the Raiders have some crucial decisions to make. Robert Spillane, LB, $10.4 million market value, no-brainer to re-sign. Defensive captain, green dot leader, brings intensity. The Raiders have lacked this kind of leadership at linebacker for years. Nate Hobbs, nickel CB. Great player when healthy, but injury concerns are a factor. Needs to be re-signed at the right price. Trayvon Moehrig, S. Worth bringing back, but only if the deal makes sense financially. Malcolm Koonce, edge. $20 million market value. High upside, looked like a rising star before his injury. But $20 million is way too much. He's only had half a season of solid play. If the Raiders can get him back on a prove-it deal, that's the best move. K'Lavon Chaisson, edge. Adds depth at a key position. If Kunce's price tag is too high, Chaisson could be the more affordable option. Final thoughts on free agency. The Raiders have cap space, but they can't afford to be reckless. Prioritize key signings and know when to use free agency versus the draft. Add depth at linebacker and cornerback. Be smart with contracts. Don't overpay for risky players. This offseason will be crucial for the Raiders. It's going to be exciting to see what moves they make. Now it's your turn, Raider Nation. Which free agents should the Raiders target? Which players should they avoid, especially at quarterback? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love Raiders content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next video.